Vernomatic Productions.
Are you ready?
Live from the Metal Mayhem Studios in Rochester, New York.
We are gold.
And heard around the world by metalheads just like you. This is Metal Mayhem ROC.
Heavy metal music.
Your weekly dose of metal music, interviews, album reviews, news, and more. Want to be part of the show? Send us a message through our website, metalmayhemroc.com, or hit us up on Facebook and Twitter. Search Metal Mayhem ROC, a proud member of the Pantheon podcast team.
It's getting nice and heavy.
Now, welcome our hosts, John the Vernomatic Verno, and direct from New Jersey, Metal Walt.
Good evening, everybody. We hope everyone's staying safe, continued good health, and enjoying the spring of 2025. Well, tonight, Metal Walt's back with another one of those off-the-beaten-path kind of interviews. Walt, what do you got for us this week?
So we go across the Atlantic Ocean to the UK for Ginger Wildheart of the Wildhearts, a band that flew a little bit under the radar, but then again has been around for 30 plus years. Number one, I will say this, we very rarely talk about the music itself, but this is a 10 out of 10 album, unbelievable songs. It's a top 5 album for me for the year for sure. It's got everything you want there. Crunchy riffs, killer melodies, lots of harmonies, and the good part of it is it's a very serious album. It's all about his mental health struggles and going through the exercises of trying to become a healthier mental stated person. So he really brings it home, and I think it's content that people really can relate to on a personal level.
You know, when I was editing this, and I'm editing the video and editing the audio, his voice sort of reminded me of like Russell Brand. He had that kind of charisma. And on the video, and listeners, I invite you to get up to the YouTube channel and watch the video. He was really eccentric. He had like this outfit on, and his hair was like all like in ponytails, and you know, he's quite a character. And so again, what's his name? Ginger Wildheart?
Ginger Wildheart. He comes from a region on the coast of England that has a lot of other popular rock stars. So he'll get into that, John, and it also shows the difference in, let's say, the language and the humor. There's a big section there where we talk about an uncomfortable word in the English or the American version of English that you never, ever talk. You never say it. Yet over there, it's said in jest. And then we just go down this big rabbit hole of talking about, politically correctness and, curse words and how they're wrongly interpreted and how people need to lighten up a little bit.
Here's a little disclaimer. It is a little eye-opening, the language at the beginning of the interview, but like Walt said, it lends to content later in the episode. So, Ginger Wildheart, I'm looking forward to that. In the next couple of weeks, I have some interesting shows I'm bringing to you. A New York City thrash outfit, a new band, new album that has old school roots, and an old school crossover legend band is back in 2025 with a new album, and I have an interview with them. So that's coming up. And Walt, you've been hard at work. What do you have to offer in the next couple weeks?
Well, we have a member of Body Count coming on the show soon. Towards the end of March, we're going to celebrate the 50th anniversary of a classic rock album with a member of the band. And then further down the line, we're going to hear from some members of a band that's reuniting on stage for the first time in a very, very long time.
All right. Well, this May, it's going to be our 6-year birthday. So, we're hard at work. Just a quick reminder, get up to the website, metalmayhemroc.com. Sign up for the newsletter, get alerts on everything we're doing here. While you're there, check out the merch page. We had a couple sales this week. We appreciate it. And as always, subscribe to the pod, leave a review. That stuff helps. All right, well, let's get into this. Ginger Wildheart, talking the Wildhearts, the new album, The Satanic Rites of the Wildhearts. For my co-host, Metal Walt, I'm the Vernomatic, and this is Metal Mayhem ROC.
On this episode, we're joined by Ginger Wildheart, founder, singer, and guitarist of the Wildhearts, a British rock and roll band that's full of piss and vinegar. They have a fantastic new album out now, Satanic Rites of the Wildhearts. Ginger, how are you?
I'm great. You just said piss.
I did say piss. We could curse on the show. So you could say fuck. You could say cunts from your new album. You can say anything you want.
Yeah, you can. You can certainly spell it. Kunce. That's how we spell it on the album.
I know. We're going to cover off on that great new album of yours. So Ginger, I'm from the New York City, New Jersey area, and I can tell you this. Anytime I get on a call to interview an artist, or let's say even during my day job, they pretty much can say, oh, I know where this guy's from. He's Italian-American. He's a New York City guy. So I was looking up where your origins are from. So the South Shields, UK, which is nearby Newcastle for those that don't know their geography. And I've done my research, but I have a question for you. Are you a Geordie or are you a sand dancer?
Technically, we're sand dancers because we're born on the beach. But everyone I know supports Newcastle, so we're Geordies by default, if anything. But yeah, it depends on who you speak to. Some people say we're not Geordies. We say we are Geordies.
What makes a Geordie? Like, what is a Geordie?
Well, a Geordie is, instead of milk, we used to get brown ale. And, we also have a very rich history of terrible football. So that's what makes a Geordie. We invented bad weather and violence and crap football and good music.
Well, that's it. Well, I was doing my research too. And I mean, we all know Brian Johnson's a Geordie, but I didn't realize, well, I'd say Brian Johnson and Sting, but then you have Mark Knopfler, the Tigers of Pantang, and pop sensationalist Sam Fender, who I think is cool. There's probably a lot of others. Do you ever rub elbows with these guys, like in the pubs or anything?
We also have Brian Ferry. He was a Geordie, and Stan Laurel. He was from here. Also, Eric Idle from Monty Python was born in South Shields. Yeah, we've got a rich array of people who all left South Shields. So we're kind of famous for people leaving. But I swear that everybody's grandmother originally comes from here, even yours. So it's a good breeding ground for restless souls.
See, because it's a sea town, correct? You're on the water.
That's right. Yeah, we're near the North Sea. So it's we used to have a very thriving shipbuilding industry. That was where South Shields was famous for. When I was a kid, people used to try and we had a big company called Swan Hunters. It used to be the main ship contractors, and everyone used to try and say, like, fuck music, you got to get a job in the shipyards. And as tempting as it was, I stuck with the music path. Now the shipyards are gone. Everybody who I know who have jobs is all unemployed, and music's still going strong.
That's it. Well, Sting wrote that book. He called it the Last Ship or something like that, and he turned it into a Broadway play. So, like, are you currently in that region still, or have you kind of left as well?
No, I've lived all over the world. Since leaving at about 16 years old, I've lived everywhere. I've lived in New York. I find myself in the Yorkshire Dales, where the Yorkshire Dales meets the Yorkshire Moors. That probably means nothing to anyone, apart from that's where American Werewolf in London is set. But we're right next to the moors. There's nothing here. If you went missing, it would take years to find you. There's just peace and quiet and the odd sheep and nothing else, which I realized that's exactly what I needed after having lived in towns and cities my whole life. I needed the peace and quiet of nature to unscramble me head.
I see that. So I know you played in a band in New York City in the 90s, I believe it was. So where did you live in New York City? What part of the city?
I lived Lower East Side. I lived in Stuytown for the longest time. I've always gravitated towards the Lower East Side. I loved it. I loved it. In fact, I would have still been there now if I hadn't have been so damned expensive. And I found that New York was just a hustle for the whole month. Then at the end of the month, you just about make your rent. You'd have about 24 to 48 hours of respite, and then the hustle would start again. and it was insane. Not only was it insane, but you couldn't find musicians because they were all holding down 4 or 5 jobs. So the only musicians that were available there were trust fund kids that traditionally don't make very good musicians. So yeah, the New York I wanted to find was replaced with the New York that I found, which was all just hustle, hustle, hustle. And I found there was very little time to actually make music. So it was a good thing and a bad thing that I left, but it was inevitable.
Yeah, and you had the experience. You could say you could check that off your box of places you've lived. So going back to your Geordie roots, and then we're going to move on here. I was always curious. You were born David Leslie Walls. How did you become Ginger? Was that a Geordie thing? Where'd that come from?
Ginger was originally an insult. So if you got, where I come from, people have got either blonde hair from the Vikings or jet black hair from whoever moved in had jet black hair. But anyone with reddy brown hair was all called Ginger, and it was like being called Fatso. It wasn't a term of endearment in any way. So of course, me being me, when I signed my first record deal, I thought, wouldn't it be funny if I called myself Ginger? Like, would it be funny if I called myself Fatso or Big Nose? And it stuck. And now, even my mom calls me Ginger. So I figured at some point I better change it legally. So my name on my passport now and my driving license is Ginger Wildheart.
It's pretty cool. Hey, listen, you had Ace Frehley and Gene and Paul so they changed their names. So could you, Ginger, and in the States.
I love the fact that Ace Frehley's name was Paul Frehley. I figured Frehley was like the part the way he must have changed, but Ace Frehley's one of the coolest rock and roll names of all time. I'm an old Kiss fan. When I was a kid, Kiss meant everything.
It meant for all of us. I was just having this conversation. Can't remember with who recently, and I said I'm 54 years old now, but in the late 70s, everybody was a Kiss fan. It's just a matter of which guy did you identify with. I was Ace Frehley.
Well, everyone was Ace Frehley. I mean, I must admit, right at the beginning, I like Peter Criss because being a little kid, I moved around a lot. I went to a lot of different schools, and at one point, I was going to schools where the older kids were drawing pictures of Kiss, and there would always be artwork on the walls of the people that were the better artists, and it was always pictures of Kiss. So before I even heard Kiss, I was already attracted to the image, and it was Peter Criss's makeup that I gravitated towards. Of course, then when I went to see them and saw live footage of them, which is all we had because there was no YouTube back then, Ace Frehley was the guy. So yeah, like everyone else who ended up playing guitar, it was all about Ace Frehley. And then, like most other people, especially in your neck of the woods, as soon as we heard Ramones, we stopped listening to Kiss.
That's it. The punk rock, exactly. Well, I can see how the Ramones was an influence on your sound. So, Ginger, your band, the Wildhearts, has been around for 30 plus years now, which is amazing. You're now 11 albums in. However, the band has had a very big history of highs and lows. I would say, looking back, what do you think has been the key to the band's resilience?
Resilience, being stubborn. That's been the key to my resilience. Since I started out in this business, I wasn't very good at giving up. So I think people say, like, after 30 years, how do you still manage to keep it up? And I'm just like, because I never quit. There was times when everybody around me wanted me to quit. Even recently, people wanted the Wildhearts to be over because certain members of the band didn't want to continue. I'm like, that's just not the way I'm made. I go down, but I get back up again. And that's been the continuing reason why we've kept going all these years is we don't know what else to do. So
right, well, I was going to say to you too, because go ahead.
One of the biggest things about the Wildhearts throughout all of this time has been the community. We've had an amazing community, which is almost like a family now of people who followed the band, and it's much bigger and it goes much deeper than the band itself now.
Yeah. But for you yourself, though, Ginger, because you have the band, but and I know guys have come and gone through the band, But, you've also released, 10, 11 solo albums. You've guested on a million things. I mean, you look at your online CV, it's 10 pages long. So I was thinking, how do you, with such prolific output, let's say, how do you maintain such a high level of productivity? I mean, without burning out, let's say.
I tell you what, I don't understand how musicians don't keep going and don't get better. I don't understand how musicians run out of ideas. If you're a novelist, you don't stop being able to write. If you're a painter, you don't stop being able to paint. Then the difference between music and other art forms is the monetization of it, the commercial aspect of it. Success doesn't seem to work with musicians. So one of the guiding lights, I think, for me was I was never really successful. I personally, where I come from, I'm really successful because there's not very many musicians. But I believe that I'm successful for little things like I don't have a boss. I can get out of bed when I want. But more importantly, I write songs that connect with people. And there's been a dialogue going for years about, which songs have really helped people. As a music aficionado and fanatic myself, I know how important music can be. Almost on a medicinal level. Music can raise your spirits when nothing else is doing the job for you. So I've always had that, and that's what I feel anyway is my idea of success. Commercial success, tons of money, adulation, reason enough to sit on your arse and do nothing. I've never had that, and I've seen it destroy some of my friends who've got amazing break in music, and it's been the worst thing that ever happened to them, and they've said so much. So yeah, I think one of the best things that never happened to me was success.
Well, it's like anybody else, right? If you come from a middle ground upbringing or whatever, you got to work hard, right? You got to put food on the table. You got to look at your family roots. You got to look at the work ethic that maybe your parents and grandparents had, and you got to, can't just have everything handed it to you, right?
Well, let's face it. I've got kids myself, and they're kind of the YouTube, TikTok generation.
Yeah.
And their idea of hard work, we call it graft here. Their idea of graft is to make songs that people can get the idea of the song in the first 30 seconds. My idea of hard work is based on 70s bands who've had an amazing output. One of my biggest inspirations was the Good Rats, who were very famous around your area. That was I didn't know how many people were listening to the Good Rats. I just knew that this one person listening to them, that meant the world to me. And their music, it never kind of rested on its laurels, again, because they never had that huge glut of success that meant that they could take 5-10 years off. So yeah, my inspiration, people like Cheap Trick, people very much like Sparks, who are still making albums to this day. People like Motorhead, who made album tour. That was my inspiration. I tell my kids, look, the jury's out whether or not TikTok and YouTube are going to make you a career. They might make you a 15-minute career, but as far as I'm concerned, you want to last a long time in this business, you got to put in the hard work, and you got to keep up the hard work. Get in the back of the van, do the gigs, write the songs, don't get lazy. And I think that's the main problem with musicians, is a lot of them get lazy. I don't know what it is about music that makes people so lazy, but it was never in my DNA to sit on my arse and watch the world go by.
Yeah, well, that sounds like you got a good work ethic. So, Ginger, just not specific to the new album, but, in general, your songwriting spans so many genres, which is unique in and of itself. I mean, there's punk, there's punk pop, there's country, there's hard rock, there's a little metal, there's garage rock, there's glam rock. Like, when you set out to start any project, right? Well, how do you get going with your creative direction and decide what you're going to do?
The album writes itself. I write to order. I write for an album. I'll get one song. I'll feel like, oh, that's good. 2 songs. Hey, we've got a single. 3 songs. Oh, I'm pregnant with an album again. And then I'll just write the 10 songs needed for that album. Sometimes there's more than 10 songs. The 555 album was a triple album. That was 30 songs, most of which were written in New York when I was there. but I've always written for the album. So I feel like I'm in tune with something that's given me the information, and I just play the conduit, the catalyst, if you like, and just write the songs until the album's complete. It's a bit like an artist who's got a big block of concrete and he's chipping away all the things that are not the statue inside. That's what I feel like with an album. I just chip away until the album's done. But being inspired is where I get my songs. I think that's why a lot of songwriters live wrong, because they're not inspired. They're probably going out and partying all the time, spending their money on holidays and stuff, but they're not in the place that originally inspired them. I was always inspired by the countryside. So even when I didn't live in the countryside, I would go away to the countryside to write. And it always worked for me. So, I don't believe in sitting and beavering away over your guitar every single day trying to get something. I just walk with my dog until something arrives, and it still works 100%.
Exactly. So we're going to take a quick break. If you're enjoying this interview, please leave us a review and subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening. When we come back, we're going to hear all about the Wildhearts' new album, Satanic Rites of the Wildhearts.
Metal Mayhem ROC.
We're talking with Ginger Wildheart about their latest album, The Satanic Rites of the Wildhearts and His History in Rock. So, Ginger, on to the new album. It's an amazing body of work. I've listened to it probably 7-8 times over the last week. It's the only thing I've listened to in the last week, I got to tell you. So it definitely hit an emotional spark with me. But first off the bat, what is the title? Where does this come from? What's it all about?
The title was the idea of the record company. I'm working with an E&R guy, who's the head of the company now, whose first job back in 93 was to work with the Wildhearts. So the fact that we've come complete circle and met up again is great. So when he has an idea, I take him seriously because he's had as much experience in his walk of life as I have in mine. Different experiences, obviously, but he's old school. So he told me he wanted a title that kind of referenced the first title, which was called Earth versus the Wildhearts, based on a movie theme. He wanted a movie theme on this one. I'm a huge Hammer movies fan, like most people of my generation in Britain. So I just looked at my Hammer films and I saw the Satanic Rites of Dracula. I thought, hey, this is a good idea. It goes no deeper than that. That's all it means. It's a film title. So yeah, sorry, there's nothing a bit more meaty behind it. It's a Dracula film.
Well, but that's okay. That's cool though, but you clarified that. I even think about, let's say, the album art, because I'm old school too. I love album art and that kind of thing. But the image of you on the title, or I'm sorry, on the album art, it's a little unnerving. So what was the inspiration behind you kind of looking like you're on ice?
I was on ice. The first album cover I did myself because I couldn't find anyone to do it. And I wanted to try and depict as uncomfortable as a human being could be. So for the first album, I lay in a bath of black oil with real barbed wire wrapped around my face and a bunch of insects crawling around. I figured that it doesn't get worse than that. It does get worse than that. We discovered that on the last album. Now, Dante is old school. So instead of doing something computer graphic, he wanted me to actually lie in an ice cold bath of water mixed with milk to make it white. I'll paint the picture. It was the hottest day in the UK of the whole of last year. Everybody was sweltering. People were avoiding the heat. I was in a bath of freezing cold water and then getting out again, then getting back in again. I had frostbite. My lips are blue in the picture. Both me and Dante, we'd rather make a memory and an experience than just a cool looking cover done on a computer. So we had to go full school. We had to go a method. And that's why I look so cold, because I really am.
Well, see, I can figure it was like a real, that was not an image, but, not to that degree, but cool. Thank you for sharing that story. So again, Ginger, in a general sense, you're a great lyrical writer, by the way, but you tend to blend wit raw emotion and storytelling, kind of all together, life stories. But for this particular album, or any album in general, do you have a particular writing process or ritual when you start songwriting or lyric
A lot
penning?
of the songs come from a lyric, a rhyme and couplet, or just a cool sounding title of a song. But lyrics are really important to me. And I know in rock music, lyrics aren't important to everyone. I love bands like the Babies, who've got probably the worst lyrics of all time. But I love lyrics from Pepe Marcello from the Good Rats and Ron Mayle from Sparks. Really, really intelligent but funny lyrics. So I picked up that kind of my need for great rock lyrics from Sparks and Good Rats. Before that I was listening to Kiss, who rhyme baby with baby. You know what I mean? It's like I wasn't writing about anything but girls. Then I realized you can write literally about anything. Ramones used to write about their bedroom or sniffing glue. I've just had a really, really good education.
Yeah, that's so true, though. It's kind of funny when you're like a 16 or 15-year-old boy. For me, that was in the mid to late 80s, listening to the hair rock and that stuff. And it was just like, partying and this one and girls and chicks and fast cars and bright colors. And then after a while, sometimes 30, 40 years later, you listen to that and you're like, cringe, cringe, cringe.
Yeah,
right?
well, I got drunk yesterday and I never ever listened to my own stuff, ever. Even when I record an album, I listen to the test pressing to make sure it's okay. Most of the time, I never ever listen to that album again, apart from when I get really drunk. I had a nightmare day yesterday. My car, which I've just got back out the garage, ended up back in the garage. The radiator exploded. I had to walk 3 hours home. I'm just like, fuck it. We're walking via a pub. I got drunk. I came home. I listened to the Wildhearts and some of my solo stuff for the first time in a long time because I don't get drunk anymore. I got a hangover today, which was a good reminder why I don't get drunk anymore. But I was really taken by the lyrics. I'd forgot a lot of these songs, and I figured, there's some good, interesting ideas going on there. So yeah, I'm just a big wordsmith. I really, really do like good, funny lyrics.
Well, when you get into the songs of the new album, and I have lots of comments and questions on a lot of the songs, there's a certain, let's say, I wouldn't call this a concept album, but there's definitely a theme and a story behind this, and a bit of a journey, I would say, about your mental health. So, you open up the album with, my opinion, 4 straight killer tracks. Yet your first single you bury at the back end of the album. It's almost like the 10th or 11th track, and it's the longest song. It's 7.5 minutes long. The failure is the mother of success. Now, musically for me, this one, it's like there's 4 mini songs in there. It's like it starts off heavy and fast, then it gets kind of flowery. Then I get this sensation, this image, like Pete Townsend and Roger Daltrey and Keith Moon walked into the room, and for about a minute and a half, it sounds to me like the Who walked into your home studio, Ginger, and jammed out with you and then walked out the door. But, you repeat the lyric. You took a lot of knocks to get where you are today, and I counted it. You say it 15 times in a row. But why was this your single, and what was the message behind this one as it relates to the whole body of work?
It was the single because of the record label who decided that was going to be the first. I thought they were crazy to do that. But I thought it was also very brave. But the fact that people heard this, the outro of the song of the album first, obviously the song makes a lot more sense when in the context of a whole album. But as a standalone single, you just have this 8-minute song with about 4 minutes of the outro. I like how brave it fits in with my idea of do things unorthodox, but I never would have picked that as the first single. And I thought it was incredibly brave of the record company to do so. But there is an arc on this album. It starts out with someone whose life's a mess. They're a mess. And they make the decision, I'm going to make things better. I'm going to see if I can make my life the kind of life I want to live. So during the course of the album, personal inventory, going through a lot of unpleasant memories, leaving the past behind, stop being anxious about the future and live in the moment. By the end of the album, the protagonist has realized that they've got a lot more control over this than they thought. I think we've all got a lot more control over our mental health than we thought. It's just a case of being brave, making those decisions, getting out of certain predicaments, relationships, jobs, even geographically, just stopping everything, focusing on yourself and making big changes. And it's a lot easier. The thought is way scarier than the practice. Once you're doing something and you're in the moment, it's pretty easy. And it's the sort of thing where you learn a lot by changing your life. Whereas it's hard work, but being in the old you, the old life, that's hard work, but without any revelations. You're learning nothing. So it's the bravery it takes in changing your life is paid back pretty much immediately by the stuff you learn, and notwithstanding the amount of improvements that you make, how much better, how much freer you feel. Being in control of your mental health instead of relying on an industry, on a system that's broken. Doctors don't really care about you. You're by yourself. Once you realize that this false sense of hope that you get from the medicine, the health system, once you realize that is a false hope, they're going to take that hope away from you. In an ideal world, you don't want anything that anyone can take away from you. And that's why, personally, I started work on myself. I would only recommend that to anyone. If you find yourself stuck in a place in your life and you can't move, a lot of us as human beings are unfulfilled. We feel like there's something that we're not doing. And I think that's because of habit. So all it is changing old habits for new habits, which, isn't really that hard. Just takes a certain amount of bravery to actually jump off the cliff and build your wings on the way down.
I could tell you that, anybody I think that would take their mental health seriously could relate to your stories and your lyrics and your personal experience that you share on here. And that's very brave of you to put yourself on the line, because it inspires others, and it's full of substance here. Unlike what we were saying, our childhood bands, they were just, bubblegum pop. But, the album opens up with a song Eventually. Now, this one, describing it to me, it's full of guitars and riffs, yet it's got so much pop sensibility to it. It's just such a bright song. And then you go into the second track, Scared of Glass. And to me, this is your radio song, Ginger. This is your FM hit. It's garage rock at its best. And I'm not going to lie, the lyric, and I'm going to sing it to you, all day, all night, oh yeah, all right. That sticks with you, man.
I would have picked that. I would have picked that as a single, but I've been making music independently for a long time, and I made all the shots, and it's so refreshing to have someone else make the decisions for you. But yeah, I would have thought that would have been a better single than the 8-minute long song with a 4-minute long intro. But that's what's called working as an entity, a delegation. We're trying to keep things very democratic. So yeah, it's I like that song. I like that. I like the sentiment in Scared of Glass, where it's about your big attack and fear, and usually your biggest fear is you.
Yeah. I love how those two kind of segue into each other. I hear some female singers coming in at the back end of the song. Like, what's that one all about?
We have a girl called Carol Hodge who sings with us, and she's amazing. And she plays hidden keyboard on the side of the stage. I wanted someone who was way less talented than her to just play the odd thing, but she wanted the job, and she's way overqualified. But I think we'll probably feature her more as we go on in the years. But yeah, I love male-female vocals. I'm obsessive about the sound of male and female vocals together. So yeah, any chance I get to have a female voice on the records, I'm going to take it.
It fits so nicely at the back end of the song because you don't want the song to end and then you kind of clap in. It's a little gospel-y, soulful. It just fits nicely back
I
there.
love gospel.
So
I absolutely love gospel. You know, when I lived in New York, I used to go up to the gospel churches and stuff like that. I've always had a love for gospel, and especially through bands like Lone Justice and Maria McKee, with a very much a gospel element to her. Dolly Parton as well, a very much a gospel element to her. So yeah, any chance to shoehorn a little bit of gospel in there, and I'm going to do it, especially because it annoys the right people.
when you would visit, let's say, up to the Bronx or somewhere in New York City, did you ever, let's say, get called up on stage to say, go into this gospel church, and they say, hey, who's that cool tatted up white guy back there with long hair? Get him up here.
I was the only white guy in there, so they weren't going to ask me to do anything but leave.
So, Ginger, Troubadour Moon, this is your, let's say, your second single, and it's got a cool video. But this one, it's such an energizing song. I absolutely love this one. You wrote in the press notes that you were reading an article of a well-known musician that kind of said, there aren't any troubadours out there anymore. So what's the storyline behind this one? Take us through your story.
Well, one of my favorite, I love Steve Earle. One of my favorite Steve Earle songs is Hardcore Troubadour. I've always loved the word troubadour, but I loved it when there were troubadours, and now there's no one who really lives for the art. I guess there are, like the song says, but they're all hidden somewhere because they didn't have the success. It eluded them for whatever reason. A lot of the reasons why people don't have the success is they listen to too many experts. So someone's making like their first album or something, and they've have people telling them, well, if you do this, it'll be successful. If you write like this, if you do this kind of video, and then it's not successful, and they find themselves the owner of nothing. They've done something, even their art is being compromised, but they can't take you can't get rid of the art. If you're a songwriter, you're a songwriter. So it's written from a point of fact that these people are still writing music. They're just writing it for themselves. So it's a pretty sad song and a cautionary tale. Don't listen to the experts because they don't have a clue what's good for you.
Yeah, but it's also back to when you were talking at the top of the hour, it's a little bit about your personal sacrifice as well. Like, I love the video where the guy's sitting in his basement, he's strumming on his guitar, he's throwing sheets of paper around, and then next thing you know, he's like sweeping floors at a bar, but it's not giving up like your dream to be the real musician you are, right? Like somebody who you say you are, right?
That's our drummer, Charles, in the video. Yeah. So he makes a pretty good rock star, I think. But my story's not similar to the story of the guy in the song, because I did really well out of this, and I'm still making music and people still listen to it and they still come to the shows. But as far as I was concerned, there was never any choice but write the next song, write the next album, go out and promote it on tour. It's the way that I've always done things. One of my heroes is Lemmy, and Motorhead just never stopped work. If Motorhead had stopped work, people would have stopped loving Motorhead. It was that kind of, got to stay in people's faces. You got to stay on top of your own laziness. So, and I think human beings are basically lazy. It just takes a little bit of work to get over that. And I'm no different. So I've forced myself a lot of the time living hand to mouth, but even when things have been going great, or even when I've been addicted to drugs, the music never stopped. It was always the most important thing. I think a lot of people, get sidetracked by their addictions till they become as important as the music. It never was that case for me. Even when I was drinking 24/7, music was still the most important thing. I was just numbing the rest of life. And long may it continue.
Yes.
Nothing's more important to me than music, than the cathartic experience of getting your personal feelings out in a song, and then they connect with someone else. Man, that's more than a job. It's more than a hobby. It's a position of service.
Yeah, that's the magic in it all. It's the connection between artist and fan. So, fire in the cheap seats. Number one, I love the analogy to your brain being on fire, and your brain is the cheap seats, like if you're at a football club or something like that. But, this one musically, it's a little different because it's kind of frantic and disruptive and angry, but then it's very bright and melodic. But who are you kind of in your lyric, or you're saying goodbye to things, goodbye to this, goodbye to that one, goodbye to this. Who are you saying goodbye to it here? Is this kind of like you're taking your personal inventory and kind of ridding yourself of your past?
Well, it's more confessional. It's actually saying goodbye to ex-partners of mine. Without getting too heavy, I think everybody's okay with being involved, whether it's a musician in a band or a partner with you. Everyone's okay being involved with someone with mental health problems until the mental health problems arise. And then it's not so easy. I've had to sacrifice a lot because of my mental health problems over the years. And this song is talking about relationships that have broken down because of a history of depression and not dealing with it. That's been the main reason. So it's accepting that, you've lost a lot because of this. The cheap seats, if you like. You sacrifice a lot, whether it's in rock and roll or in mental health. My case, both. And so it's melancholy. It's saying this is what I've had to give up to get this far.
Yeah, it's just another part of your journey. So, we talked about it at the top, cunts, right? Kunce. We could curse on this, right? And it's funny, I was thinking about this, although not knowing you lived in New York. You British guys use the word cunt, you throw it around like it's nothing. We don't use that in America, but we have words like jerk off, douchebag, asshole. Those are the words we throw out there. So, but a clever music here. This one to me sounds like, a bunch of punk rockers kicking in the door of the bar, smashing a bunch of bottles on the wall. It's very rebellious. There's a lot of anarchy here. So what's going on in this
song?
Well,
the word cunt, I always thought Americans got it wrong. You use the word cunt to describe female genitals. We never do that. We would never call the vagina a cunt. We call our friends cunts. You call someone a cunt, you're either really good mates or you're just about to get in a fight. It's pretty cut and dried. But we don't use that word to describe female genitalia. So I think that's where you guys got so offended by it, because it's like you're talking about the Holy of Holies. When I first moved to New York, I got in touch with the Hells Angels for saying cunt. It was just like, you don't say that word around us. I've seen it being a little bit more liberal now, especially since TV shows like The Boys. People are talking about it. I've seen a press junket on The Boys where the cast are liberally throwing in the word cunt into the interviews, and I thought it was hilarious. It's about time that you guys caught up with the art of insult. But like you said, douchebag and words like that, they mean the same to you as cunt means to us. So that's kind of my reasoning for using it a lot. I just love the word. It's so short and blunt and to the point. If you want to call someone, you're going to start a fight in the bar, boom, it's like a punch. Cunt, boom, it's off. And with your friend, you cunt, it's pretty as well.
It's a term of endearment. I get it. I had a friend once who was gay, and one time I called him, I don't know, like a fruitcake or something like that. And I was like, you're just being such a fruitcake, or don't be so fruity. And he got so offended by this. And I'm like, fruity doesn't mean homosexual to me. It means like you're corny or something like that. Like, you're not cool. You're fruity. Like, that's a dumb thing.
I know gay people
that's how it
who
is.
Don't use the word gay to describe anything gay. They use the word queer to describe gay things. They use the word gay to describe something that's not very good. That's so gay. So it's like, it's one of those words where people who are heterosexual are afraid of the word. But, it's like you want a really good handicap joke? Ask someone who's handicapped. But yeah, I'm in love with gay culture. Part of me wishes I was bisexual so I could embrace it more. But I've always been in love with gay culture. So I love words like gay. I think they're funny. Same as retard. I can see people trying to bring retard back in, but retard doesn't mean retarded. Retard means what's wrong with you? These are great insults. You know, they're classics. They're like cars. They're like, you know, guitars. They're classics. Bring them back.
One of my best friends, when we were back in our heavy drinking days, we used to call each other faggots because it was like, oh, I don't know, it's 3 a.m. I don't want another beer. I would tell him, and he would say, "Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me, Walt? Don't be such a faggot." Like, it wasn't not a gay term. It was like, have another fucking beer and shut your mouth. And if you throw up, deal with it tomorrow.
The idea that people can call something that's offensive is so weird. It's so judgmental. It's so narcissistic to say that something's offensive. You're offended, maybe. Everyone's got the right to be offended by something. You can be offended by the word "the" if you want. But it doesn't mean to say that the word "the" is offensive. And I think at the point now where people are so sensitive that they can be, scared of words. I've never understood how someone could be scared of a word. The intention behind the word is everything. Right. And you can, if you want to be, aggressive with someone, you can call them a hamburger and it'll come off as offensive. But yeah, people get offended in general too easy. I come from a place where dark humor kept people alive. It was how people coped with not having money, not having any options. Your sense of humor got really dark. So I was brought up with that. I couldn't and wouldn't change for the world. So, I offend people all the time, and it's like, well, good, be offended, if that's the way you want to go, but it ain't going to change me. I don't find it offensive.
Well, I have my 87 going on 88-year-old father. He's got more jokes in his brain and a lot of them are not appropriate anymore. And he tells them, he'll go up to a stranger at a restaurant and he tells jokes. And sometimes people are like, you can tell they're uncomfortable, but I'm like, have a laugh. Take it for what it's worth. It's a joke.
It depends on the person telling the joke. One of my favorite comedians is Anthony Jeselnik. And Anthony Jeselnik tells jokes that nobody else could tell. But his delivery is so great that it makes complete sense of his whole shtick. So yeah, the word isn't offensive. The joke isn't offensive. Maybe the person telling the joke isn't very funny. But, a good comedian can say something offensive and it'll be really funny.
Exactly. Well, Ginger, this has been a great segment, but turning a little bit more on the serious side, one of the special tracks on this album that I felt I was very connected with it is Hurt People, Hurt People. It's a serious, subdued, emotional song. And this one hit home, because, there's been loved ones in my family that have battled addiction and things of that nature. And I feel like this song can speak to me. It can speak to somebody else that I care about that struggles. Take us through this one, because this really is a change of pace from the rest of the album.
Well, it's again written about my experiences in the mental health system in our country. You get thrown about and then spat out and left with nothing. And those people can be dangerous, It's like when you're carrying around a big bag of hurt, it's very natural to hurt other people in the process. But realizing this means that, well, if I work on it, then chances are it's going to make life easy for other people. And it's a magical effect. But it's written from point of fact of someone saying, I've lost hope on there being any help. My only hope is that I find health myself. I find coping mechanisms, survival skills, and I adopt them when I need things, and not just medication, not just therapy. You got to remember that doctors, they're not experts. They're taking it from a book. People who suffer from mental health problems, they're the experts. And they're usually, carrying a lot of baggage. So yeah, the idea, it was my daughter. I get in trouble calling her daughter because she's gender fluid. But my daughter give me the title, and I just thought that is so cool. And then when the song came through, the title fit perfectly. And yeah, it's a very thoughtful song. But again, it's thoughtful, but it's hopefully for some people it gives a little bit of hope that you have more control over this than you've been led to believe. we're still in the Victorian ages as far as mental health's concerned. But, if I can talk to one person at a time and make things a little easier for them, God, that's reason enough for my existence.
Yeah, totally. I always say, you know what, for those that are afraid to address their mental health, don't be afraid. I have a therapist. I go to meetings. It's a common thing in my family. It's good. And sometimes I think it's even better than going to a medical doctor. So, Ginger, the album is fantastic. There's other tracks on this album. I'll Be Your Monster, which is your next single, Maintain Radio Silence. I say that one's your Motorhead song. It reminds me of Motorhead. And then Blue Moon Over Brinkburn. What is Blue Moon Over Brinkburn? It's got to be something that us Americans don't get.
A lot of people won't get that initially. It's Brinkburn is my school. The song is about when something bad happens or even something good happens in your life and you think that this is forever. Given a little bit of distance of time, and you look back and you can barely remember it. That girl that broke your heart, 10 years later, you can't even remember what she looks like. And I used to feel that in school. I hated school so much. It felt like a prison sentence that lasted 50 years. It was only a few years, and I went back home and back to my school, and my school's closed down. It's boarded up. There's weeds growing out of the ground. I lasted longer than my school. That's success. But it was just, there was a new moon in the sky. There was a huge moon that seemed to be right over my old school. And it was a lovely summation of how far that I've come and how little I can remember how bad things were. So yeah, it's in a nutshell, it's stick around for the punchline, because this is just a very nuanced, very complicated joke. But there is a punchline, and the punchline is none of it matters. It's all a load of, life is ridiculous. And even when it's something really bad happens in your life, the last time something bad happened in your life, it didn't kill you. So this one won't. And trying to maintain that positivity is the art of life itself.
Yeah, amen, brother. Amen. Well, this has been a great conversation. What's touring looking like to promote the album? You got dates coming up?
The album comes out on March the 7th. The first date of the tour is March the 7th. And then round about March the 7th, spring arrives. Now, it's been a brutal winter, especially where I live, in the middle of nowhere. Everything's been closed down. It's been hardcore. March the 7th, everything comes to life. I cannot wait. It's going to be a pivotal moment. It's going to be one of the best moments I've ever had.
Well, that's exciting. I'll be rooting you on from across the pond, and we'll look up your dates. Do you ever get over to the States
Not
with
enough,
the Wildhearts?
But I love New York so much. I plan on being there to the point where I tell people I am going to be there this year. With the situation that things are globally, with the situation, how hard it is to get a visa these days, it's insane. It's almost like they're keeping bands from playing America, bands from England and Europe and stuff like that. But we will persevere, because I want to get back and I want to play to you guys. So, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Exactly. So for more information on Ginger and the Wildhearts, head over to thewildhearts.com for all of their information and links to their socials. So, Ginger, listen, this has been my pleasure. I really feel like I got to know you. This has been a great conversation. Best of luck with the new album. So after this album, what's down the line for you guys? Any surprises in store for your fans?
We do the tour in March. The album comes out, and then we're straight in the studio in April to demo the next album. So yeah, I'm really excited. It's going to go some interesting places, as you can probably imagine.
Well, this is good, and you're a working man, as you can tell. You don't rest on your laurels. So, Ginger, we appreciate it. So for today, for my guest, Ginger Wildheart, I'm Metal Walt, and this is Metal Mayhem ROC.
Metal for life.
Thank you for listening to Metal Mayhem ROC. Check out our website at metalmayhemroc.com for information on podcasts, archives, links to all our live radio shows, and all sorts of info. Please like, follow, and share with everyone, even your non-metal friends. And always remember to keep it heavy.